Hello and welcome today. My name is Jerry Greider. I am Rangam's Vice President of Global Marketing, and we're welcoming you to our Rangam Empathy Drives Innovation Series, or what we like to call REDi, where we bring you blogs, chats, webinars, and many other features. So whether you're a job seeker, an employer, an educator, or a community partner, REDi has something for you. And we're really excited today because we have joining us Dr. Glenna Crooks from Strategic Health Policy International, as well as our very own CEO from Rangam, Nish Parikh. Welcome to you both.
Thank you,
Welcome. Thank you.
Jerry.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed getting to know your organization.
And so I will turn it over to you, Nish.
Thank you, Jerry, and welcome, Dr. Glenna. Dr. Glenna is a strategist, innovator, author, activist, and counsel to the government and business leaders. In her last book, Story Told in the Network Sage, Realize Your Network Superpower, which is, I'm really excited to learn more about the book. So describe a new way to help people lessen the overwhelm of the modern life. Addresses challenges of work-life balance, performance, productivity, and family caregiving. As a founder and CEO of Strategic Health Policy International Inc., she was known as one woman think tank with a talent for organizing chaos by her clients. She was appointee of President Ronald Reagan, responsible for 70 billion portfolio of health programs. As a global vice president of Merck's vaccine business, she expanded U.S. operation to create global business, tripling vaccine sales to more than 1 billion in under 3 years. A graduate of Indiana University, she is a fellow of the University of Pennsylvania Center for Neuroscience and Society, and a fellow of Drexel University Center for Population Health and Community Involvement. With that, Dr. Glenna, welcome to Ready Chat, and thank you for joining us today.
It really is my pleasure to be here. I've enjoyed our conversations before now as we led up to this one today.
Yes, yes. So, Dr. Glenna, could you please share your story, your experience with this wide experience from government to the universities and academia, and some amazing work. Could you please share your experience that led to where you are today?
You've already hit some of the highlights. Let me overview it this way by saying that I've really had quite a privileged career. I've been able to work not only in healthcare, but in education. And not only at the local or state or national level, but also globally as well. So that's given me a wide variety of experiences with quite a diverse population of people and the needs that they have. And all of that informs what I'm doing right now in helping people to understand the support networks that they have around them and how to optimize the human capital that we have available to us. Let me use a kind of an example. Imagine, if you will, that we had no way to track financial capital. We didn't have bank accounts or QuickBooks programs or spreadsheets or financial advisors to help us know how to optimize those resources. That's very much the way we are right now with human capital. Which is something that I learned from what is now 15 years of deep ethnographic research with hundreds of people from all around the world. And that's how I happened upon this notion of networks and why they were important and how to understand who was in them and how to optimize then the human capital that were available in them.
No, that's a great how, and you what you refer to, how do we optimize human capital. Just share a little bit more on that point, that you are not just talking about at the workplace. Your whole theory and your work is focus on we as an individual. Also, tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
The best way to talk about that is with the origin story of this idea. I was working at the time, my clients were top executives in corporations, appointees in government, sometimes elected officials in government, and they were telling me that life was too complicated and they couldn't do it anymore.
Mm.
So I went looking for a solution and I found one in an unlikely place. It was a fashion magazine from an unlikely person, Robert Downey Jr. Now, I wouldn't have noticed this interview except that the trailer for the first Iron Man had just dropped. This was 2007 at the time.
Mhm.
I happen to like action flicks and superheroes. So I think that's why I even noticed this interview. Now, in it, he said something that changed my life. And since
Mhm.
then, the lives of a lot of other people. He said he had a pit crew of people helping him out, a yoga teacher, a sensei, a psychiatrist. He said, but I need a pit crew because after all, I'm not a Model T, I'm a Ferrari. And it takes a pit crew to keep us on the road. Well, I thought to myself, I must have been in one of my snarky moods that day, that thought to myself, Buster, if you're a Ferrari, I'm at least a Maserati. And you know what? You're right. It takes a pit crew. Who's mine? And how
Mhm.
are they doing? And then, of course, after a while, I realized I'm on other people's pit crews. How was I doing? So that's what led me first into a study of my own life. A lot of changes I made as a result of even figuring out who was in it.
Mhm.
People noticed and wanted to know what I was doing, and when I told them and it worked for them too, that's when I knew there were general underlying fundamental principles that we
Mhm.
must be drawing on, and that's what kicked off the research that I've done. Now, it was at the 10-year mark in that research that I stopped and wrote the book that you've already mentioned, but
Yes.
my research continues, and here's what's happened. Although my goal at the start was to help talented people stay in the workforce, since the book has been read by others, they keep pointing out new implications for the book and new applications for the book. So
Mhm.
it does help with senior caregiving. It does help with planning to age in place. It does help in coaching, say, a first generation college student through their college years and then launch into their profession. It does help in understanding the journey of a customer or in healthcare, the
Mhm.
journey of a patient. I never saw that when I first started, but now that this framework exists, others are seeing it. And I am more than delighted to now interface their field of expertise, like yours is in diversity and inclusion, and then my field of expertise, which is an understanding of these networks.
Yeah, no, that is pretty very interesting. You mentioned employee engagement, employee satisfaction, and overall productivity at the workplace. Um, could you please share your thoughts on how this can be utilized by, as you know, we our expertise and one of the solution which we have built to promote employment for people with disabilities, where we help them find job and then create the right environment. How your this theory and your work can help individuals with disability or a neurodiverse candidate. Just briefly your thoughts, at the workplace, how is that connected to your work and your theory?
Well, there's two things, well, or more than two things, but let me start with just a couple. So, one is that there are eight distinct, what I call life networks, that are their enduring networks, who support working adults. The
Mm-hmm.
career network is one of them. And within the career network, there is a smaller group for just the workplace. Okay, so that's just a little bit about the structure.
Yeah.
Now, that one of the reasons why it's hard for us to think about work life balance is that
Mm-hmm.
we're balancing one network and really only a portion of one network because it's the job within a bigger career network, which could include things like career education, for
Mm-hmm.
example, and career networking. So, those are
Yeah.
things off the job. So, we're balancing that job against seven other networks.
Mm.
And we don't have a good way of looking at what those other 7 networks are and how well they are functioning. One of the things I have learned in my research is that the biggest determiner of whether an employee will be productive on the job is the quality of those other 7 networks.
Mm.
Are they in good shape? Are they supporting this individual as a working member of adults in the world?
Yeah.
And you're hearing this debate some as we now consider going back to the office, or either moving away from working at home or having a hybrid situation. You're starting to see that workers have networks that aren't supportive. They don't
Hmm.
have good childcare or stable childcare or childcare that they
Hmm.
can afford, or the parent who needs care. We don't have the community and other support systems that will provide that care so that the adult child can go to work. Or we have a healthcare system that is not responsive. And so if a parent is up all night with a sick child because a doctor won't return a phone call, it's
Yeah.
obvious they're not going to be as present on the job the next day. So that's the first issue is now, what I have found in my research, by the way, and this should be a comfort to any employer or manager, is that when you understand those other 7 networks, you can begin to work to optimize them. That might include finding other support systems, or it might include just activating the ones who were already there that were hiding in plain sight because you hadn't really identified them. So that would be one thing. Now, on the job, then there's something else that we can do, and that is to really look at what networks are required in order for somebody to function and do
Hmm.
their job well. We no longer work in a narrow hierarchy.
Hmm.
I'm sort of working on a speech in the back of my mind called Our Org Charts Are Lying to Us,
Yeah.
because our org charts make it look like we're in a hierarchy, when in
Yeah.
fact, chances are we're working up and down the corporate food chain and across all kinds of functional and staff support systems. Many people on the job are not only working in the company, they're working outside the company because they have responsibilities with customers, or clients, or regulators, or the press, or
Hmm.
vendors.
Hmm.
So the job is actually far more complicated than we let on in our org charts and our job descriptions. Now, one of the ways in which I talk to people about their connections is not only being clear about what you want to get done, but who you're doing it with. So
Yeah.
who are the people who are
Different
most important?
generations. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and some of those people I call primary. So in other words, they are the absolute most important to you. It's a pretty small list. So that would be your
Hmm.
boss or your top customers or so on. But and then to satisfy that person, you turn to a variety of other people who are supporting you. So being really clear about who those people are. When I talk to people in the field, for example, in sales forces, um,
Hmm.
they tell me that Salesforce is really good for them in terms of understanding their customers, and the customer relation management systems like that they have are really quite good, but they don't know where to go inside the company when they
Yeah.
need help.
Right.
So this starts to expose that and make it clear that they need to know who those people are as well. So that's another way within the company that you can apply this idea.
This is really um, interesting and very unique. Being in the HR world, this is something which I've been learning from you from this conversation. So I truly appreciate your work and how you see it. You also, I remember you mentioned there is a complexity comes into the picture because of the multi-generational, the workforce, multi ethnic workforce, multilingual, gender fluid workplace. Please share your thoughts how that is really creating more and more complex today's work life balance and overall work life.
One of the things that I've observed over the course of my being in the workforce is that it's become more diverse in two ways.
Mm-hmm.
The first way is that there's more diversity among the individual people.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's a handicapping condition or neurodiversity or race, I mean, or language, whatever those dynamics are, it's become more so.
Yeah.
There's another major shift as well, and that is there's more than one person who's diverse on many teams or in many companies. You see, and I'm going to say this as a person, as a woman who was for many years the first and the only woman in the room.
Yeah.
When you are a diverse number of one of any category,
Yeah.
the system does not change. You change.
Mhm. Yeah.
You are required to make whatever accommodations need to be made. When more people join, then the organization starts thinking about how it should change in order to adapt to the multiple people who are there. I'm going to use just a dietary example. When I was diagnosed with celiac, I'm the only person around who's got that condition. I had to
Yeah.
adapt. I had to bring
Mm-hmm.
my own food. I remember when I was back, you mentioned that I worked at Merck. Back in the days, we were thinking about diversity. And one of those ways was we noticed we had a number of people who were Orthodox Jews and kept kosher. So we, at a certain point, realized we needed to make allowances to have more kosher foods available in a company's cafeteria.
Yeah.
Or if we're going to order in food for a team meeting, we have to make sure that we've gone to a kosher establishment so that our multiple colleagues could be accommodated during that lunch. I can only imagine today that the
Mm-hmm.
workforce is accommodating not only people with celiac, because there's so many more of us around, and kosher, but also halal and perhaps vegetarian, healthy
Yeah.
vegetarian,
Yeah.
for the workforce from South Asia. So um, that doesn't happen until there's more than one.
Yeah.
And that's another change that I've observed as well. Now, here's the other problem or challenge for the workforce is that because of that diversity and because it's not that one person who needs to accommodate and adapt and roll with the punches when somebody says something that is not as sensitive as it might otherwise have been because it's just not informed. Um, now there's a much greater need for everyone to understand that. And yet, as in diversity increases, as language changes, and so on, because these are evolving issues, it is really easy to offend somebody, yeah, not knowing and not intending, but
Yeah.
innocently so. And you
Yeah.
don't know until a fight breaks out, until someone's been offended, or they've gone to HR to complain, or it makes the work, or you feel the tension in the team. And add to that what's going on in the rest of life. Throw in a late flight on an airplane or a snowstorm that cancel school for the day, or an IT screen that sends some important emails to your spam folder, and that only exacerbates it all the more.
This is so amazing. So, what I heard and what I learned that, and I didn't think that way before this conversation. That when you are alone as a diversity, one individual, we have to figure out our own accommodations, and then the next step is find allies once that population goes up. So this is exactly what we do when we set up those neurodiversity at work program and disability inclusion program. Here, what we have seen, that individuals, they are already there, they are part of employee resource group or business resource group, and they are championing these initiatives. But once there is enough traction, enough size of that diverse population, that's when the change starts. So thank you for sharing that. My next question is, what is happening in today's interconnected world. it's shaped by the internet and social media. What steps can individuals take to optimize their career network? Because as a workforce solution company, we work with a lot of job seekers, and part of our audience who's listening to this, they might be able to get some advice from you and help them for their professional growth and advancement.
The basic principle for whether it's your workplace or it's the rest of your life are the same, and they're pretty simple. And in the book, I talk about them as ACT SAGE: awareness, clarity, and transformation. So the first step is to become aware. And
Mhm.
I will tell you that nobody in my research is. I wasn't either when I first started out. I didn't know who was in my life. It took me, not in one sitting, but overall, probably 8 hours to come up with a list of people. And even then, I wasn't correct. Now that was at the early stage of this work. Now that I've been at this for a while and I've characterized these networks, I have ways, in the book describes some of them, of helping people to quickly become aware of everybody's in their life. So the first step literally is to sit down and make a list. Who's in your life? Now, by the way, this is not your Christmas card list or your holiday card list. It is not LinkedIn. It is not Facebook. These are the real live people that you interact with every day. I mean, I don't
Mm.
know about you, but I got 7,000 people in my Outlook database.
Yeah,
Most of them don't matter on a day
right.
to day basis
That's
in the
right.
context of my life.
Mhm.
So the first one is to make that list. And then to organize that list in a way that meets your needs with, say, within your company,
Mhm.
um, and then to start getting some clarity about whether somebody's missing, for example. That's the sort of thing. If you had a list, and if you had a mentor or an ally inside the company, you could say, "Here's the people that I'm relating to in the company. Is there somebody I'm missing? Here are the people that I think are the most important. Would you agree that they're the most important?"
Mm.
To get some advice, particularly from people on the management side, who might know what your goals and your aspirations are for your future and your development. But don't stop there. You also need to look at your personal life and the people who are there. And you need to have that list too. And here's why:
Mhm.
both the list of people inside your company and the list of people outside your company, that is a really good starting point. They are your first degree connections. Okay.
Mhm.
Now,
Mhm.
the best source of information for your future is not your first degree connections, it's their connections.
Mhm.
Here's why: you and your first degree connections tend to have the same information. You're sort of birds of a feather, if you will. You hang out together, you work together every day, you're seeing the same sort of information. But people that they know are getting information that you don't know. So and this is really important at two stages of our lives. I mean, the stage of our life when we're looking for a mate. Friends of friends are the best source of information about a prospective mate.
Mm.
And they are also important at any stage of our life when we are looking for a new job. So whether that's a new job inside the company you're already in or a new job someplace else, it's the friends of your friends who are going to be the best source of that information. Now, you can't reach out to them unless, or, I should say, the connections of your connections. Because they might not be your friends, really. They might be somebody else. And I have an example with somebody who got a job through their dentist, for example, because the dentist
Mm.
knew somebody. So you can't reach out to the friend of a friend or the connection of a connection unless you know who your connections are, unless you know who your
Mhm.
friends are. So that's the place to start, and then to reach out from there.
That's amazing. So first step is be aware, identify, make a list, get advice. You briefly mentioned mentors and mentorship. Um, can you please just extend that, your thought on allyship and mentorship? How that can be encouraged and promote allyship and membership to provide support to individuals from underrepresented group, people with disability or neurodiverse. because that's one thing which we call in our world, we call it as a support system. We build that those mentors and who works with mentees at the workplace. Please share your thoughts how this allyship can help unrepresented group.
I would not have been able to answer that question if so many professors and academic deans and executives hadn't come to me to talk about first generation students,
Mhm.
first generation college students. And I was where we started the conversation. But I now see that happening with anybody who's first generation in any workplace. So, in other words, and let me take a group that you might think are the most privileged.
Mhm.
Somebody whose parents were lawyers, and they went to medical school, and they want to become physicians. Their parents had wealth, they had connections. This person had opportunities, but medicine is very different than law. And so the family network of this person, and that's where we get launched from, is that family platform, cannot help them understand medical school and the practice of medicine. That's true with any diverse population group that comes into the workforce. Chances are there was nobody back in their other networks who can help them make the transition. So having a mentor or an ally is absolutely necessary if they're going to be outrageously successful. Um, and if it's going to be a little bit easier for them, and if you're going to retain them in that
Mhm.
workforce. What I would want that mentor or ally to have some sensitivity about, though, is this idea of networks and how if they're seeing what to them might look like a difference that is a deficit, it's not necessarily a deficit, it's just the lack of an opportunity up until now to be taught by anybody who cared about them because that person didn't understand the dynamics. So if you come from a family of educators, they're not going to understand business. So you're going to
Mm.
need a business mentor. One other principle about networks is really important. Every network has a center of gravity, and this is what I would want mentors and managers to realize. If you are
Mhm.
below that center of gravity, it will pull you up. I realized this learning
Mm.
playing tennis, although I didn't realize it at the time. When I played with a better player, my game was better, right? So anybody who mentors, if you come into the network of somebody, you've got a higher center of gravity. Just your being there is going to help pull them up. And so
Mm.
an individual person should look for an ally or a mentor for that reason. And a mentor should be pleased to know that even being present with this person without the kinds of other things that mentors do can raise that person's skill set in
Mhm.
subtle ways that are very meaningful in the workforce. I would want them to appreciate themselves for that and not feel like it's an overwhelming task to become the mentor of somebody who is in a diverse population or neurodiverse or different in some way. That I think they should see that as a grand opportunity to learn about
Yeah.
that person and their needs, but then also to share just not only what they've learned, but the presence that they have that can help to be transformative.
That is so amazing. I wish I could have continued this conversation. A lot of learnings from this conversation. Before we conclude, I think we went a little bit over, but I would love to ask you this question, because as you know, diversity and disability inclusion is very close to my heart, and everyone at Rangam. What significant changes, if you have seen in last few years, before we conclude, if you can just share that with the audience, that would be great.
Well, I would say this that if there's anything that has benefited the diverse population of employees, it's that so many other people in the workforce have experienced so much of what they have always lived with. Um,
Yeah.
because we've all been so challenged by the pandemic, and
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's with tremendous humility that the rest of us ought to learn what it's been like for others who've not, for look at how long for how long it was for all of us that we have problem getting access to the goods and
Yeah.
services that we need. Well, there are parts of the diverse population that have experienced that for their entire life. Um, all of the limitations that we have bumped into, many people in your community have been living with. And I
Yeah.
think we've acquired a new sensitivity. We just need to
Yeah.
realize that now and take it into our workforces and see how we can do it better. Because let's face it, I mean, you and I both know the population of diverse individual in this country and anywhere adds so much value. And we've been
Mhm.
missing out on that because they have not been as present in our world as they should have been.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, and that's what we at Rangam we believe about, right? Empathy was really kind of challenged among all of us, right? Everybody was kind of put in other person's shoe, and we started realizing that. So, Dr. Glenna, thank you so much for your wisdom, for your great advice and great work and research in this area of network, and how we can be more productive and more effective at workplace as well as our personal life. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. We truly appreciate your time and would love to continue this conversation in coming new episodes on different topics. So thank you again.
It was my pleasure to be here.
Thank you everyone. We'll continue this conversation in our next segment.